Ukraine hits a Russian naval ship as resistance ramps up and NATO leaders gather and agree to send reinforcements exactly a month after the invasion. Let's move on now to the ongoing war in Ukraine now. And NATO is to deploy 40,000 more troops to bolster Eastern Europe. It came after alliance leaders met at an emergency summit in Brussels. UK troops will be among the battle groups and more missiles are being sent to help Ukraine defend itself. And NATO leaders warned President Putin he would face severe consequences if he used chemical weapons. Well, this is the situation on the ground exactly 1 month after Russia invaded. Around the north, east and south of Ukraine's border, Russian forces are on the defensive. It encircled Mariupol, where there's been fierce Ukrainian resistance. But residents continue to flee. We'll have more on that in a moment. In the occupied port city of Berdyansk, Ukrainian forces claim to have destroyed an enemy ship. As our Europe editor James Mates now reports.
1 month after the war began, at least a week after Russia thought it would have declared victory, and Ukraine scores one of the biggest victories of the war. A Russian naval landing ship hit and destroyed in the occupied harbour of Berdyansk. 2 others that lay alongside damaged and forced to flee.
Good morning, Mr. President.
For NATO leaders at an emergency summit in Brussels today, this is heartening news, as are reports that Ukraine may be pushing the Russians back around Kiev. But if they thought that meant the pressure would be off to send more help, they were quite wrong. In an address to the summit, Ukraine's President Zelensky wants much more, specifically tanks and aircraft. We're asking for tanks, he told them. You have at least 20,000 tanks. Ukraine is asking for 1% of all your tanks. Give them to us or sell them to us. There's no sign that will happen, nor that NATO will confront Russia directly. But 4 new NATO battle groups are now to be sent to reinforce the alliance's southeastern borders, while the UK will send 6,000 more defensive missiles, plus an extra £25 million in aid. Boris Johnson has led the way on military help and for his pains been labelled Russia's enemy number 1 by Moscow. But amongst Western leaders, he at times seemed to cut an isolated figure today. And unlike President Biden, he hasn't been invited to the EU discussion tonight on tightening oil and gas sanctions. Is Europe doing enough? Are the Germans doing enough? What will Britain do to help other countries who rely more on Russian oil and gas to wean themselves off it?
Thanks, James. Look, and I just want to say that this is easier for some countries than it is for others. I think it's heroic, and I applaud what Germany is doing. They've set themselves deadlines to move away from oil and gas. I don't think it'll be easy, and the Italians are doing the same. I don't think it'll be easy for them, but it's the right thing to do in the long term, in the medium term, and we will help, of course.
Within the last hour, President Biden spoke of an alliance that was confounding everyone, not least Moscow, with its united reaction.
Putin was banking on NATO being split. My early conversation with him in December and early January, it was clear to me he didn't think we could sustain this cohesion. NATO has never been more united than it is today.
But while the alliance has been shocked back into relevance and purpose, there remains a determination not to be dragged into this conflict. At least not unless Putin resorts to chemical or nuclear weapons, in which case all bets could be off.
There will be more emotional reunions in the western city of Lviv as people flee towns and cities almost completely destroyed by Russia. Among those arriving in Lviv's main train station are families who've somehow survived the horrors unleashed on Mariupol. Our correspondent Garrett Vincent heard their stories of survival.
In Mariupol, the structures that make up civil society, human society, have been upended. The places where people once lived peacefully, emptied and burned.
City is under continuous bombing. In our estimation, from 50 to 100 bombs they use each day and do airstrikes on our city.
Mariupol's deputy mayor told me that Ukraine's army still holds the city, but can't stop the bombardment.
Russia used warships and they shells from missile to our city, and we do not have anti-warship, anti-missile weapon.
Fleeing the shelling and arriving in the west of Ukraine, families carry their lives and each other in their hands.
As the West ponders further responses to the assault on this country, evidence of a war on civilians pours into this city every day.
Residents of Mariupol fill the platforms here. Shahla introduces me to the loved ones she has brought with her.
How many children do you have?
A son, daughters and grandchildren. Her brother and his family live in the same apartment block, she tells me, but she lost contact with them during the bombardment. My heart is broken, she says. Her daughter Laman kept repeating the same word to me. Genocide. Genocide. She points out the cut just above her son's eye. He was standing in the kitchen when the window came in. They have at least survived, but their existence now is fearful and fragile, and there may be more sorrow yet to come. Geraint Vincent, ITV News, Lviv.
A Russian journalist has been killed by Russian shelling in Kiev. Oksana Baulina had been reporting from Ukraine's capital and the western city of Lviv for the independent Russian website The Insider. She died while filming damage in the city's Podil district. She's one of several journalists killed in the conflict. Great stuff. Thanks, Alex. Finally tonight, a happy ending for a group of rescued Ukrainian children who have safely arrived in Scotland. Many of them are orphans, and earlier this week we reported how their journey had been delayed several times by paperwork, but now they are here, finally, as Mark McQuillan reports.
Smiles on arrival for these Ukrainian children, a step towards a brighter future after an unimaginable ordeal. Fleeing war in their country for a warm welcome and new home in the UK. Their journey here via Poland hasn't been without its challenges.
Oh my God.
It's been cancelled.
Oh my God.
They've cancelled the flight.
Transport and paperwork issues have made the logistics complicated. But after a couple of days of delays, a proud pilot and packed plane set off from Warsaw to London. Some of the 52 children on board, many of them orphans, had never flown before, but the group from Dnipro are now preparing for a new life in Scotland. All thanks to the generosity and perseverance of others.
It's such a relief to be on that plane because for quite a few days it's been touch and go as to whether we would be able to bring them. So excited, the kids, they couldn't believe it when they first saw the plane on the tarmac. I saw their eyes widen and they came on, they sat down, immediately started playing with the screens on the back of the seats. Then they were given all these treats.
The children have what personal possessions they have been able to bring with them. Scotland will now do its best to provide new home comforts and a warm welcome to a group of children who have been through so much in their short lives so far. Mark McQuillan, ITV News.
A more positive story to end with.